Winter, the start of my spring semester junior year of college, my plans were derailed by a major medical situation. After undergoing 6-hour open abdominal surgery, I was on a long road to recovery. Missing some parts I wish I wasn't, and glad to be rid of others. Days later, in a Demerol withdrawal haze, waiting to eat again, the world marched on without me. My friends started classes. I would have a lot of time to think in my hospital room, that too much time that realizing one's own mortality offers. I don't know if there's a specific point when you become an adult, but I'm pretty sure this was it for me. A close call, I hoped, or maybe worse, I didn't know yet. One Tuesday, in the midst of my hospital confinement, I sat with a friend and we watched Ronald Reagan's inauguration in a surreal moment. Truth is, from the beginning of November to the middle of January, all of my medical issues seemed to just get worse and worse, metastasizing like the political powers I could not believe were emerging. We watched the inauguration, having fun cracking our sarcastic jokes as the B-movie actor was sworn in. I had to hold a pillow to my stomach when I laughed. We were smart-aleck righteous, lefties like religion, and it felt like our country was trapped in a post-World War II frame of mind after 30 years. I didn't imagine the transformative political shift about to take place. I don't claim any scholarly standing, but I have learned that history is always being written. We just don't know what the really good stories, the important stories, will be yet. I was 14 years old when Richard Nixon resigned. More important than seeing that, just before entering my sophomore year of high school, was everything that had transpired in those 14 years. I was 10 when the Kent State shootings happened, just 12 days after the first Earth Day, 8 when Martin Luther King Jr. was shot, followed soon after by Bobby Kennedy. Body counts were standard fare on the 6 o'clock news. I won't recite the entire list of events back to Malcolm X and JFK, but you couldn't blame us for being just a bit cynical. The tone of the intervening years from my sophomore year of high school to junior year of college are pretty well captured by Richard Linklater in his non-documentary, Dazed and Confused. I held that pillow and lobbed snarky comments as our new commander-in-chief and his CIA vice president took charge. It just couldn't get worse, right? Politically, we had an Iron Curtain and the constant threat of nuclear war, and the former commander of California now in the White House. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, just 6 weeks after Reagan's inauguration, closer to home there was an aberration in local politics. Of course, that's a separate and related story. Early evidence of my belief that Vermont is where the 60s has come to die. And I mean that in a good way. Perhaps we should all be thankful that life can be long. So I'm not saying nothing good happened in the past 35 years, but nationally, the thrust of leadership, every once in a while, there's been a glimmer. In case the preceding 20 years had not fully clarified for young people like us that resistance was futile, then came President Reagan. A hero to some, it is undeniable that what he and his crew, some ascending stars, began has colored the political landscape in so many ways. It's good to remember that imagination and charting a long-term course is for the determined and the bright without further qualifications. And we have continued on that course of strange bedfellows and unintended consequences, often rooted in assumptions from an earlier time or a clutching to another era. Something I've learned is the limits of worrying about the things you anticipate. It's the stuff you haven't imagined that will throw you. The unknown variables always get you. Occasionally, a little crack has appeared to signal a transition into a new era, but we've continued our increasingly polarized public discourse and laying groundwork for future disasters. I've never been clear when it's really one step forward and 2 steps backward, but I've always liked that phrase. Like glory days, when we were young and invincible, or at least that's what we think until we're set straight. The old team always seems like the best times, especially in the worst of times. What does change really look like? Can we recognize it versus some ever-present other we want to hold responsible for our maladies of today and tomorrow, firm in our beliefs and affirmed in our righteousness? Look at the arc, as I look at the arc of our country's political leadership in my adult life and our media's complicity, our trajectory seems like a steady drift to a divided discussion of us and them. And I don't say this as a Democrat or a Republican. I am neither by principle and profession. It's just that, really, we've only gotten this far since I was 8, 10 years old, 20. We can't blame all the outcomes on someone else. Some other that we foggily theorize is taking all the good stuff from us. I say this as an individual imagining on the question of what do we want? If it were all over tomorrow, would we be proud of what we let happen or what we accepted? Or are we just stuck in that mid-20th century frame of mind, a time when we could see our enemies as singular and identifiable? You don't get to write a lot of the setting of your story, the context, but the you part, that you have to create. You never know when your story is going to end. Sometimes it comes so close you can feel the wind. And does that story reflect what you really want? Because that is all that you can control.